Money Megs.
Where do we start?
Well, how are you? That's a good way to start.
I'm okay. I think everybody has gone through some things the past couple years, so I think being okay is a good place to start, right? I always had a full-time job, and I would wake up and go to the gym at like 5 a.m., come home, eat breakfast, watch the news, go to work all day, go to dinner afterwards, go to an event afterwards, stay out, and then go to sleep for maybe 4 or 5 hours and do the same thing the next day. And, I thought that was really fun, and I thought that's what I needed to do. I thought, I have to be certain places to be relevant, and I have to like constantly keep up on connections and know what's going on with people. And I think we all kind of had this moment once we did slow down of realizing like the connections that we actually wanted to make and keep, and the things that we really valued, and the places we really wanted to be. So yeah, I guess life was just too much before. It's like everyone is kind of being pushed to be normal again, but we all know that normal was not okay for most of us. So I guess like finding balance is not that easy because, unfortunately, that we don't have a lot of control over, paying bills and the rising costs of living and things like that. So it's like, in some ways you have to like appease whatever the demands are. But in other ways, it's like, learning that rest is so important, or quality time with people is so important, or, you don't have to, travel to every single place, just to go. Like when you travel, like, it should be more meaningful and, be more selective with the things that you do, I guess. This is a really great industry, but at the same time, like I think about those circumstances and like that's what brings me back down to earth. Like it's okay. We're going to be stressed out for a day or a couple hours, but then we move on and we have, something else to stress out over or something else to be proud of. And, you can't internalize it. I guess that's the biggest thing that I learned, when, I was unemployed during the pandemic and I had time, and, I just realized like life goes on with or without me. So you can't take everything so personal, and you can't like treat every project as if, it's gonna change your life. Everybody has like their variants of like what's healthy and what isn't. So like I know in the opposite way, like a lot of people while they were home, learned to eat better or got into home workouts or, got a Peloton or something like that. And, it like helped their mental health and, got their endorphins up, and like, that's great. But I was not working out in that way. Like I was working out in a very unhealthy, restrictive way. And so it was good to kind of like get over that hump of like, like you're not going to fall apart if you're not, lifting 4 times a week and going to swim class and going to this and going to that. Like you'll be okay. Just leaving Syracuse the first time, like when I went to college in Boston, and that was the first time I had been, my school was in like the middle of this neighborhood of all these mansions, and like I just kept thinking like, how are there so many people with this much money to have these houses? Like this is crazy. Like what do they all do? And like, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. And I think again, with the pandemic, like when you see like, these billionaires becoming, bigger and bigger, and, or even just like the government all of a sudden being able to cut checks in certain ways. And it's like, oh, like the money's out there. They just don't want it to go to everyone, like the support is out there. The structure is out there. They just want to keep it up here, and they don't want it to everybody else. I remember in ninth grade, they had us take like those career assessment tests, and mine said I wasn't going to graduate high school. So I kind of was in this like mindset of like, oh, well, like I'm not, like my parents weren't like pushing me to go to college or like get good grades or anything. Like, so I just had kind of like accepted that like I was, just this like bad kid, I guess. And I never went to school. I was skipping all the time. I smoked cigarettes. I actually quit smoking cigarettes before I was old enough to buy them. Smoking weed all the time, going to parties. Like, I really just had like no real focus or like, I don't know, thought of even leaving Syracuse or going to school or anything like that. So 2002 was not my best year, but, not the worst either. But then my older brother, he was kind of in a similar boat. So, he, this is going to, show my age, but he got really into like the rave scene. And, this is like when ecstasy was like first really a thing. And he was like the first one to like bring it to our high school and was like a drug dealer. And, he was getting kicked out all the time. And he overdosed a couple times. And then he just like his senior year of high school just like woke up and quit everything and like really applied himself in school and somehow, got some weird scholarship for like kids from poor cities that don't get good grades and went to college and then like kind of inspired me to do the same. So he passed away in 2009. He went to a wedding that was like in the country kind of. And it was like late at night after the wedding, everybody had been drinking and he went to walk to the gas station to buy some more beer. And someone was driving and didn't see him and hit him. And they said that he died instantly. So like at least, he didn't suffer. But yeah, he was 26. And his friend that was with him called me. I like hung up on him the first time because I thought he was joking. I was like, yeah, this is not funny. Like, and he had to call me back and explain that. But, even though that was so long ago, like it still seems like he's my older brother still, like I'm way older than 26 now. But I still see him as like somebody who's still like guiding me and stuff like that. Like, even moving to the city, like, after I graduated college, I really didn't know what to do. And this was like 2008 when, the market crashed and nobody could find a job. And like, it felt like I had finally turned my life around and like put all this work into college and graduated with all these student loans. And then I couldn't find a job, and he was living in Brooklyn, and he was like, just move down, you'll figure it out. And like, that's, how I did it. And, again, like he was the one that was like into streetwear and got me into it. And like, that's how I knew what Hypebeast was. And that's how I found the Hypebeast like job posting, section that they used to have. And that's how I found my first like job in streetwear. So, there's like all these ways that like he really guided my life already. So it's like hard to think that he's not still doing that somehow. Also just like noticing different grief styles. So like my mom passed away a couple years ago too. And with my brother, it was like he passed away and I was like, I have to like live what he couldn't do. I have to go everywhere, do everything. And it really was like this crazy, like motivating thing. And then with my mom, it was kind of the opposite. And then, it was COVID. So it's strange how like grief, like, I'm the same person, but it affected me in totally different ways, at different points in my life. And then, with my mom, it like brings up everything with my brother that I hadn't addressed. And, so. if you don't, allow yourself the space to feel it and go through everything that you need to, then, it's going to hit you in, other ways. And, whether it's like having muscles that don't work as well, or like, I know my mom losing her only son, like, is the reason why she became so physically ill. And, she passed away because, she developed a sickness like a year after he died, and, was never really able to overcome it, because I think like it just is so deeply, saddening that it takes over in a physical way. Yeah, I think that's why I ended up like sleeping so much, or, and there's a lot with like bereavement therapy and, grief counseling that you realize is normal, that you don't, when you're going through those stages, like you're like, oh my God, like I am so depressed. I've lost my mind. Like, like, I have this mental disorder? Do I have that mental disorder? And, just like realizing like, no, you're grieving, and we don't have a society where you're allowed to. So it seems like, oh, you get a couple days off, or even if you get like a month off, if you're, very lucky and, financially stable, and, you have the benefits to like take a lot of time off, like there's never enough time. And our society just kind of treats it like after the funeral, like, you should be over it. Like, okay, next thing, move on. And it's like, you don't just get to do that. Right? Because then all the, sentiments and people being around, and, the adrenaline of, having to go through all those things, like those pieces kind of fade away and everybody else goes back to normal. But, you're not normal. It's like you're changed. And I don't know who said this, but I read something somewhere that said like, the size of your grief doesn't ever change, but the container to put it in just gets bigger. And that's kind of how it feels. Like, it's been almost 13 years since my brother passed. And, it feels like he was just here, It feels like he was just here, and it's still so unfair. But, that's like something that, if someone's met me in the past like 5 or 6 years, they might not even know that, because it's just like become another piece of me. I feel okay. I don't know. I'm not very good at talking about myself, so I'm a little uncomfortable, but also it's you guys, so.
Doing a great job.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It feels very like self-important to be like saying all of these things in front of a camera, because, how am I any different or, more interesting than anybody else?
Or as interesting as
Yeah.
everyone,
Yeah. I guess that's the point of this, right? Is to, show how everyone has their own interesting thing about them.